She was old, weary, and barefoot, her eyes filled with hunger and quiet dignity. All she asked for was a bit of leftover food. But what the restaurant manager did next left everyone stunned. Then a stranger rose from his seat, and from that moment on, everything changed. Who was this fragile old woman? And how did a simple necklace unlock a truth no one saw coming? Sit back and let this powerful, heart-touching story unfold before you. This story happened on a quiet Monday afternoon at a well-known restaurant in Abuja called Agric Haven Restaurant. The place was calm. Soft music played in the background. The smell of delicious meals filled the air, and waiters moved from table to table, serving the customers. Well-dressed men and women sat at their tables, eating and talking. Everything looked normal, peaceful, clean. But what was about to happen would change the mood completely. This was the day a simple request would open old wounds. This was the day a stranger would walk in and make people look at themselves in shame. That afternoon, the front door of the restaurant opened slowly. At first, nobody paid attention, but then some heads began to turn. An old woman had stepped in. Her name was Teresa. Her wrapper was faded, her blouse was torn at the shoulder, and her legs were dusty. She had no shoes. In her hand was a small, black nylon bag, held close to her chest like it was her treasure. She looked like someone's grandmother. Her back was bent, her eyes tired, her skin dry. Her hands shook as she walked. She took one step, then another, then stopped for a moment to rest. A waiter standing near the counter whispered to another, "Who allowed this woman in here?" "I don't know," the second waiter said. "Maybe she came to beg." Teresa moved again, slowly, quietly. She walked toward the counter, not looking at anyone. A woman sitting at a corner table raised her eyebrows. "What is this?" she whispered to her husband. "How could these people allow this old woman into this restaurant?" Teresa didn't stop. She kept moving until she reached the front desk. She stood in front of the tall man behind the counter. His name was Mr. Apollo, the restaurant manager. He wore a clean white shirt and blue trousers, his hands folded, his face serious. Teresa looked up at him and spoke in a soft voice. "Please, sir, I'm sorry for disturbing. I've not eaten since yesterday. I'm not asking for much. If you have anything left over, I'll be grateful." There was silence. A customer near the counter turned around to look. A young man laughed quietly. Someone else raised their phone to record. Teresa kept standing there. She didn't blink. She didn't cry. All she had left was her dignity and her hope. But what happened next was something she did not expect. Apollo, the restaurant manager, looked at the old woman from head to toe. He didn't smile. He didn't ask her to sit. He didn't even ask her name. Instead, he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was dry, sharp, and full of pride. He leaned forward and said loudly, "Old woman, did you lose your way? This is a restaurant, not a dustbin." Teresa stood still, her lips parted, but no words came out. Apollo looked around, wanting people to hear him. He raised his voice again. "We don't give food to people like you. Go and beg outside." A waiter nearby covered his mouth, trying not to laugh. Another one whispered. Teresa opened her mouth slowly and said, "I didn't come to cause trouble. I was just hoping for anything left over, even if it's just bones." Apollo waved his hand like he was chasing a fly. "Go away, Mama, before you scare off my customers." Teresa looked at the floor. Her legs were weak. Her stomach turned, but she did not move. One by one, people inside the restaurant began to notice. A young couple in the corner stopped eating. A woman feeding her baby paused and looked up. There was silence for a moment. Then, from a table near the kitchen, a young man laughed. This old woman came here to beg food from Agric Haven. Some laughed. Some didn't. One woman looked at Teresa with pity. She touched her chest and whispered to her husband, "But she's old and hungry. Look at her legs." But Apollo didn't stop. He said again, "Mama, this is not a charity house. You don't belong here. Please leave now." Teresa didn't speak. She didn't argue. Her eyes stayed on the ground. Her hands held her nylon bag tightly. Her heart was heavy, but her feet refused to move. In the far corner of the restaurant, a woman was sitting alone. She wore a clean, gold dress that looked expensive. Her brown heels were shiny, her fingernails painted light pink. She had a calm face and sharp eyes. Her name was Jasmine. She had just returned from a foreign country where she worked as a medical doctor. This was her first week back in Nigeria. She came home on a 1-month leave to rest, visit family, and enjoy some quiet. She had only come to Agric Haven restaurant to eat a simple lunch. But now, her food was untouched. Her eyes were locked on the old woman standing at the counter. She had seen the whole thing. She saw when Teresa walked in. She saw how Apollo laughed. She saw the way people looked at the old woman like she was nothing. Jasmine's chest became heavy. She couldn't explain it, but something about Teresa made her feel strange. Her voice, her slow steps, her soft eyes. Something felt familiar. Jasmine leaned forward in her seat. Her eyes moved slowly across Teresa's face, then to her hands, and then something caught her attention. The necklace. It was old, very old. The chain was thin, the round pendant looked dull, almost black. But Jasmine knew that necklace. She had seen it before. She looked closer. She opened her bag, brought out her phone, and zoomed in quietly. Yes, it was the same necklace her best friend in school used to wear. Her best friend's name was Rosalind. They were close like sisters. They ate together, studied together, even cried together in their high school days. Her hands began to shake slightly. She whispered to herself, "Wait, how is this old woman wearing Rosalind's necklace?" She placed the phone on the table and stared again. Could this woman be related to Rosalind? Could she be the woman I've been looking for? Her chest was now full of questions, but one thing was clear. Jasmine could no longer sit and watch. Her heart was heavy. Her hands tightened around her purse. She stood up quietly, pushed her chair back, and began to walk toward the counter. The sound of her heels made a few people turn. Teresa was still standing there, silent and tired, holding her black nylon bag like it was her only protection. Apollo stood with his arms crossed, looking pleased with himself. But his smile disappeared the moment he saw Jasmine standing beside the old woman. Jasmine faced him calmly, but her voice was clear. "Did I just hear you insult this woman for being hungry?" Apollo blinked. Then he frowned. "Madam, please don't bring drama here. This woman came to beg. This is not a charity home." Jasmine's eyes sharpened. "And because of that, you think it's okay to speak to her like she's trash?" She turned slowly and looked at the people in the restaurant. Some looked down. Some pretended to keep eating, but others were watching. Jasmine raised her voice a little. "Is this how we treat our elders now? Is this who we have become?" Apollo tried to speak again, but Jasmine didn't let him. "If this woman was your mother, would you want her to be insulted like this?" There was a pause in the room. Then, from one table, a young woman whispered loudly, "This is too much. That old woman could be any of our mothers." An older man in a white kaftan nodded slowly and said, "It's true. We have lost respect. Apollo looked around, feeling the heat. The loud laughers became quiet. The proud faces became soft, and Apollo had nothing else to say. Jasmine turned her full attention to Teresa. Her eyes were soft now, her voice gentle. She spoke slowly so everyone could hear. This woman is not a beggar. She is someone's mother, someone's wife, someone who once gave everything she had. The room was quiet. Teresa looked up at Jasmine, her eyes blinking slowly, unsure of what was happening. Apollo rolled his eyes and spoke again. Madam, please don't bring trouble to my workplace. We're running a business here. Jasmine didn't even look at him. Her voice stayed calm, but it was strong. Keep talking, Mr. Manager. I know the owner of this restaurant personally. She paused, then added with firmness, one more word from you, and I promise you'll be looking for another job by tomorrow morning. Apollo went quiet. He looked around the room. Too many people were watching now. Too many phones were out filming. Jasmine bent down gently. She touched Teresa's hand, holding it with care. Mama, she said softly, you'll eat with me today. Let's go and sit down. Teresa looked at her again. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. Jasmine held her hand tighter and gave a small smile. Come, you're not alone anymore. And with that, they began to walk together toward an empty table at the side, but Jasmine's eyes were still watching something else, something around Teresa's neck, a necklace that was about to open a door to the past. The restaurant had gone quiet. No more laughing, no more whispers, only the soft sound of plates and distant music. Jasmine led Teresa to a table by the window where they were now seated. A waiter, looking nervous, came over with a tray. She placed a plate of fried rice, chicken, coleslaw, and plantain in front of Teresa. A cold bottle of water sat beside it. Teresa stared at the food. Her hands shook slightly. Her eyes were wide. Is this for me? She asked in a soft voice. Jasmine smiled and nodded. Yes, Mama. Eat slowly. You're safe now. Teresa picked up the spoon with shaky fingers. She took a small bite, then another. Suddenly, tears rolled down her face. Not loud tears, just quiet drops. She placed the spoon down and looked at Jasmine. You are a good woman, my daughter, she said, with a weak smile. God will bless you. I was very hungry. Jasmine reached across the table and gently held her hand. You don't need to thank me, Mama, she replied. You've been through enough. As Teresa continued eating, Jasmine's eyes returned to the old necklace around her neck. She leaned in a little and spoke carefully. Mama, I don't mean to disturb you, but this necklace you're wearing, where did you get it? I once knew someone who wore that same necklace long ago. Teresa paused. Her spoon stayed in her hand, but she wasn't eating anymore. A memory had started knocking, and something about that necklace was about to open a door that had been closed for years. Teresa held the spoon in her hand, but she was no longer eating. Her eyes had fallen on the necklace hanging around her neck. She touched it gently, slowly, like it was the only thing she had left from her past. Her voice was quiet. It was my daughter's, she said. Her name was Rosalind. She gave it to me before she passed. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice becoming serious, but soft. Rosalind, what was her surname? Teresa looked up, her lips shaking. Massimo, she said. Rosalind Massimo, my only child, my only joy. A sickness took her away from me. Jasmine suddenly froze. She reached into her bag quickly, her fingers searching through papers. She brought out an old photo. The edges were torn and the colors had faded, but the faces in it were clear. She held the photo with both hands and looked at Teresa. "Mama, please look at this picture," she said, her voice breaking a little. Teresa took the photo slowly. She stared at it, her eyes locked onto the young woman in the picture, smiling, full of life, wearing the same necklace she now wore. Her hands began to shake. Her lips opened, but no words came out at first. Then slowly, she spoke. This is my Rosalind," she cried. She looked up at Jasmine. "You knew her. You were with her." Jasmine's voice cracked. Tears were already filling her eyes. "Yes, she was my best friend, my closest friend. We met in school and stayed close. She told me about her illness, about what she was facing." She paused and wiped her tears, then continued. "One day, her number stopped going through. I tried and tried, but I couldn't reach her again. I was afraid the worst had happened," Jasmine added, her voice low. "Before that, she told me about you, about how strong you were, how much she loved you. She gave me this photo and begged me to find you one day." Teresa began to cry. She held the photo close to her chest. Jasmine continued, "I've not been able to return to Nigeria since then, but this time I made up my mind. I searched for you. Someone near your old house said you had moved. He didn't know where." Teresa wiped her face with the edge of her wrapper. "I left the house because I became too old," she said. "I couldn't work anymore, and I couldn't pay rent, so I left." They were both crying now. Jasmine reached out and held Teresa's hand tightly. They didn't care who was watching. The moment was too deep, too real, too powerful. Two hearts, broken by time, now healing in the middle of a busy restaurant. A new beginning. Just a few days later, everything changed for Teresa. Jasmine did not stop at giving her food. She went far beyond what anyone expected. She bought a newly built, beautiful house not far from her own home in Abuja. The house was painted soft cream, the rooms were clean, and the furniture was brand new. One quiet morning, Jasmine held Teresa's hand and said, "Mama, this is your new home now." Teresa stood at the door, looking at the house in shock. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Tears slowly filled her eyes. This is for me," she asked with trembling lips. Jasmine smiled. "Yes, Mama, you deserve it. This is just the beginning." Jasmine didn't stop there. She hired a kind young woman named Peace to help Teresa cook and clean. She also gave Peace a room in the house so Teresa would never be alone again. Then Jasmine did something even more thoughtful. She took Teresa to a private hospital. Doctors ran full tests on her body. She was given new glasses, strong medicine, and a personal doctor who would check on her every week. Jasmine also placed Teresa on a monthly salary, enough money to cover food, clothes, and anything else she needed. Teresa no longer begged. She no longer walked barefoot. She no longer cried from hunger. She had a soft bed to sleep in, clean clothes to wear, warm food to eat, and kind people around her. One evening, she sat with Jasmine in her new sitting room. A soft breeze came through the window. The light from the bulb touched her face gently. Teresa held Jasmine's hands with both of hers and said, "My daughter, may the Lord bless you. May He fight for you when no one else can. May you never lack. May your children never suffer. May goodness follow you forever." Jasmine bowed her head slowly and answered, "Amen, Mama. Amen, with all my heart." That day, a broken woman was made whole again, and a deep promise between friends made years ago by Rosalind was finally fulfilled. A bond stronger than blood. Since Teresa moved into her new house, Jasmine never stopped checking on her. She would stop by with fruits, warm food, or just to sit and talk. She video called her husband abroad and her two children and introduced them to Teresa. They would wave and greet her with smiles. They called her Grandma Teresa. It made the old woman laugh. It made her heart feel full again. One calm evening, Jasmine came over alone. They sat in the compound. Teresa looked peaceful. Jasmine turned to her and said softly, "Mama, there's something I've never told you, and I think it's time you knew." Teresa looked at her and nodded gently. Jasmine took a deep breath. "I'm an orphan, Mama. I lost both my parents when I was just a girl." She looked down for a moment, then continued. "When I was in secondary school, things were very hard for me. I used to do small jobs after school. I washed clothes, cleaned shops, sold groundnuts, just to pay my school fees and feed myself." Teresa listened with deep attention, her eyes calm and kind. "And whenever I couldn't meet up, your daughter Rosalind always found a way to help me." Jasmine's voice started to shake. She would give me money, food, books, even without me asking. She never made me feel small. She just helped, like a sister. She wiped a tear from her cheek, then smiled a little. She was more than a friend. She was the only family I had. Jasmine paused again. The wind blew softly between them. Then she said something that made Teresa hold her breath. "Mama, Rosalind is the one who helped me travel abroad." Teresa blinked. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Jasmine continued, "I got a scholarship to study abroad, but I didn't take it seriously because there was no way I could afford the flight ticket. When I told Rosalind, she became so excited, but I told her to calm down, that there was no way I could go. She looked me in the eye and said, 'God wouldn't give you a scholarship if he didn't already have a plan to send you there.' She told me not to doubt God, that if he brought me that far, he would take me further." Teresa's hand was now pressed against her chest. Jasmine went on. "A week later, she ran to me, smiling like a child. She told me that her late father's gratuity, which she had applied for a long time ago, had finally been paid. She used part of that money to pay for my passport, my visa, my ticket, and everything I needed to travel." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears again. "Mama, everything I am today was made possible by your daughter." Teresa was crying now too, quiet tears, but deep ones. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her heart was too full. Jasmine reached out and held her hand. "I know I can never take the place of your daughter," she said. "But I want you to know this. As long as I am alive, you will never lack anything. Never. You are not alone, Mama. I am here for you now." Teresa squeezed her hand. Her lips moved, but only one word came out. "Thank you." And they sat like that. Two hearts joined by one lost angel named Rosalind. And a story that even time could not erase. The fall of Apollo 3 weeks had passed since the day Teresa walked into Agric Haven restaurant and was insulted. That day still lived in the hearts of many who witnessed it. But one young woman at the restaurant did more than just feel bad. Her name was Janny. She had been sitting near the door, quietly eating with her sister when it all happened. She saw Apollo insult an old, hungry woman. She saw him laugh loudly, cruelly. She also saw how Jasmine stood up for the old woman, and how everything changed. Janny could not sleep that night. So the next morning, she sat down and wrote about it. She wrote everything, from how Apollo shouted, to how he mocked Teresa, to how the same woman ended up being honored by a stranger. She posted the story online with the title, "This happened 3 weeks ago in an Abuja restaurant, and it broke my heart." She didn't mention the restaurant's name, but someone else did in the comments. Then another person. Then another. Within 3 days, the post had over 10,000 shares. People were angry. They asked, "Who is this manager that laughed at a hungry old woman? Why is he still working there?" By the 5th day, the restaurant owner, a woman named Madame Stella, received a message from her daughter abroad. "Mommy, your manager is trending for the wrong reason." She opened the post and read everything. Her hands began to shake with shame. She couldn't believe what Apollo had done under her roof. Her restaurant was known for class and care, but now people were calling it a place that disrespects elders and mocks the poor. She picked up her phone and called the restaurant. "Tell Apollo not to come back," she said to her head supervisor. "Pack his things. His time here is over." The next day, Apollo came to work in his usual proud walk. But this time, his name tag was no longer on the counter. His locker was empty, and a white envelope with his name sat quietly on the desk. Inside, it was a simple note. "You no longer work here. Management." He stood still for a while, silent, shocked, but no one pitied him, because the world had already seen what he did, and now he had to face it. The lesson life can change in just one moment, for good or for bad. Teresa entered that restaurant with an empty stomach and no one to help her. But she left with a full heart and a new family. Let this story remind us all. Never look down on anyone because of their condition. You don't know their story. You don't know what they once had, and you don't know what God is about to do in their life. Today, that old woman who was laughed at is now living in peace, joy, and comfort. And the man who mocked her? He paid the price for his pride, losing his job to the very arrogance he displayed. What did this story teach you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below. Another powerful, heart-touching story is on its way in just a few days, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to see it the moment it drops. If this story moved you, please like and share it with your friends and loved ones. Thank you for being here. May God bless you always.